They didn't recognize me at first. 3 of them stood near the coffee station, whispering and laughing about something I couldn't hear. Their voices were lighter now, grown up, filtered by adulthood. But to me, they still echoed the same bitter chorus from high school hallways. One of them, the loudest one, wore expensive heels and a smug smile. She glanced at her reflection in the black glass of the coffee machine, smoothed her hair, and rolled her eyes as someone passed behind her. I stood quietly in the doorway of the break room, watching them. The girls who used to call me Trailer Trish in middle school now stood in the employee lounge of my company, hired last week through an acquisition. They didn't know who I was yet. Not really. Not until that morning's meeting. The irony would have made me laugh, if it didn't hurt so strangely. I shifted the folder in my hands and walked in. As I passed them, one glanced over and gave me a tight-lipped smile. The polite kind you give a stranger who might be important, but you're not sure yet. The kind that says, "You don't matter yet, but I'll act nice just in case." I nodded back, just slightly. Not a word. Because what do you say to people who used to spit gum in your locker and write "get a job, loser" on your binders? What do you say to people who once screamed out my free lunch number in the cafeteria line just to get a laugh? Nothing. You say absolutely nothing. An hour later, the conference room was full. The executive team sat at one end, and the new hires trickled in, trying to look confident while figuring out the seating chart. I stood near the head of the table, flipping through slides on the screen. And then I heard her voice, the same voice that used to bark, "Nice thrift store jeans, loser." "Wait," she said, squinting toward the front. "Is that Trisha? Trisha Morgan?" Her voice cracked in disbelief. And just like that, the room went still. Time paused. Everyone turned. I met her eyes. I saw it hit her in waves, first confusion, then recognition, then shame. Not just for me being here, but from me being in charge. "Yes," I said calmly. "Nice to see you again, Lauren." You could hear the fluorescent lights humming. No one knew what to say. So I went on with the presentation, just like I always dreamed I would, with grace, with strength, and with that small, silent power that comes from rising above everything meant to keep you small. High school wasn't just hard. It was humiliating. I was the girl with worn-out sneakers and a second-hand backpack. The girl who sometimes skipped lunch so my baby brother could eat more at home. The girl who walked to school in the rain because we couldn't afford bus fare. But that morning, I stood in front of my former bullies, in a designer suit I bought myself, in a glass building I owned, on the 23rd floor of a company that had my name on the door. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace. And the moment I saw their eyes flicker with the memory of what they did, and what I'd become, that peace arrived like a deep breath I'd waited my whole life to exhale. Back then, I used to sit at the back of the classroom, hoping no one noticed my thrifted shoes or my unbrushed hair. I tried so hard to blend in. But with people like Lauren and her friends, that never worked. I became their entertainment. "Maybe if you weren't so poor, you'd be prettier," they once wrote on my yearbook picture in permanent marker. I was 13. The worst part wasn't even their cruelty. It was that nobody stopped them. Not the teachers. Not the other kids. Not even the counselor who said, "Try not to take it personally." High school's tough on everyone. No. It was just tough on me. But I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I cried at home, behind my locked bedroom door, where the roaches sometimes crawled up the wallpaper and my mom sat at the kitchen table wondering how to pay the rent. I cried while washing my clothes in the bathtub because the laundromat was too expensive. I cried when I got my first A+ and no one at home was awake enough to notice. I cried when my mom forgot my birthday because she'd just finished a double shift. But outside, I never let them see it. And now, I stood tall in front of them, not as the girl they called names, but as the woman who signed their paychecks. I didn't plan this. I didn't scheme for this day. But somehow it came. After the meeting, I walked through the hallway with quiet purpose. I passed Lauren by the copy machine. She tried to act casual. "Hey," she said awkwardly, "I had no idea you'd, be here. This is your company." I looked her in the eyes. "Yes, I said simply. It is.
Oh, wow.
That's really amazing. She gave a nervous laugh. I guess it's been a long time. I nodded. And then I walked away. Because I didn't owe her anything. Not my story, not my time, and definitely not my forgiveness. The truth is, I didn't need her apology to heal. I didn't need her approval to rise. I became successful not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. To that little girl who used to eat lunch alone. To that teenager who sat outside the school dance because she didn't have a dress. To that college student who juggled 2 jobs and slept in the campus library. I did it for her. And that was more than enough. I didn't grow up in a house. We lived in a rusted trailer on the outskirts of town, parked next to a gravel lot that used to be an abandoned gas station. It wasn't a home. Not in the way kids at school meant it when they said, "Let's go hang out at my place." No backyard. No porch swings. Just dented aluminum walls, sagging insulation, and a narrow door that always got stuck in winter. My mother, Angela, worked at a 24-hour diner off the freeway. Always the graveyard shift. Always the same faded apron. She was tired before I ever really knew her. And after my dad left when I was 8, or rather, disappeared without a note or word, it was just the 3 of us. Mom, me, and my baby brother, Jaden. I was 10 when I started picking up responsibilities that no 10-year-old should have to carry. Packing Jaden's lunch. Walking him to daycare when Mom overslept. Boiling water on the stove for sponge baths when the hot water ran out. There was no room for childhood in that trailer. No space for dreaming. Just surviving. I remember once, I was 13, I made honor roll. It was a big deal for me. Straight A's. I was so excited that I waited for Mom to get home the next morning, holding the certificate in my hands like it was gold. She came in, tossed her keys on the counter, and kicked off her shoes. I ran up to her and said, "Mom,
Look.
I got all A's." She blinked, barely registering. "Oh," she said, rubbing her eyes. "That's great, baby. Now, can you watch Jaden for a bit? I need to lie down." She didn't even look at the paper. That certificate sat on the kitchen table for a week until a spilled cup of coffee ruined it. No one from my family came to the award ceremony. I watched other kids receive applause, roses, even balloons. I stood alone, clapped for myself. Things like that stack up. They don't seem huge in the moment, but they pile on 100 paper cuts to your sense of worth. Every time I helped at home, cleaned the trailer, kept Jaden quiet so Mom could sleep. Every birthday, I made my own cake using pancake mix. Every parent-teacher conference where I sat alone next to the school counselor. It built a quiet truth inside me. You're on your own. Don't expect anyone to show up for you. And so I stopped asking. Stopped hoping. Stopped waiting for someone to come rescue me from the weight of it all. Instead, I started building invisible armor. High school was where the real cuts came. Kids noticed. They always notice. My shoes weren't Nike. My backpack had a broken zipper. My hair wasn't flat-ironed. My lunch came in a reused grocery bag, and sometimes it was just crackers and ketchup packets from the diner. I was already vulnerable. But to girls like Lauren and her pack, I was sport. I wasn't just the poor girl. I was the joke. They gave me a nickname, Charity Case. They'd whisper it as I passed in the hallway. Loud enough for me to hear. Loud enough for others to laugh along so they wouldn't become the next target. Once, in freshman year, someone dumped a bag of coins on my desk and said, "Thought you could use this for, food." The teacher said nothing. I gathered the coins in silence, cheeks burning with a shame I couldn't even name yet. The only place I felt okay was in the library. It was warm, quiet. No one asked why I was there. I could read stories about people who lived in mansions, or traveled the world, or went to fancy schools with glossy lockers and clean uniforms. In those pages, I escaped. In those pages, I existed. At home, things got worse when Mom started dating Dave, a man with a bad temper and a worse record.
He drank.
Shouted. Broke things. Jaden was scared of him, and so was I. But Mom kept saying, "He's just stressed. Rent's late again." She worked more hours, came home later, and slowly I started raising Jaden like he was my own. At 14, I cooked, cleaned, helped with his homework, and walked him to school, all while juggling my own classes and a part-time job at the laundromat down the street. No one gave me awards for that. No one even noticed. There was one counselor, Ms. Whitmore.
She tried.
She once pulled me aside after seeing me wear the same hoodie for a week and asked gently, "Do you have a coat, Trisha?" I nodded.
Lied.
But she gave me a coat anyway. I still have it, in a storage box somewhere. Not because it was warm, but because it was the first time in years someone saw me. I used to stare at the honor board outside the principal's office. Names etched in gold plates for kids who got scholarships. Full rides. Ivy League acceptances. I promised myself, one day, I'd see my name on a wall too. Not for being poor. Not for surviving. But for becoming something more than what they expected. No one in my family ever said, "I'm proud of you." But I said it to myself anyway. Every night before bed, after Jaden was asleep, I'd whisper into the ceiling, "You're gonna make it, Trish. Just hold on." The moment that changed, everything didn't look big on the outside. It wasn't a slap. It wasn't a screaming match. It was just a text. From Lauren. Yes, that Lauren. The same one who called me charity case in high school. The same girl who laughed when I spilled soup on my shirt in front of everyone in the cafeteria. Now she was Lauren Kent, local influencer, newly hired branding consultant, and, ironically, applying for a job at my startup. She didn't know I was the CEO. I'd stayed low profile online, used my co-founder's last name for the LLC, let my chief of operations handle press and meetings. I preferred it that way, power with privacy. But her text said, "Hey babe, I heard from HR that I might be working with your company soon." So wild. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to it. Hope there's no hard feelings from like high school LOL. Let's catch up soon? Hugs and kisses. I stared at it.
Not shocked.
Not even angry. Just empty. Because this wasn't the first time people like her pretended the past didn't exist. 2 days later, our HR lead, Dana, scheduled interviews for a few new applicants. Lauren was on the list. I didn't say anything. Didn't warn anyone. I wanted to watch her walk in. I wanted to see if she recognized me. When the door opened and she stepped into the conference room, she had that same smile. Perfect teeth, practiced friendliness. But her eyes skimmed over me like I was a stranger.
Hi.
I'm Lauren Kent. She extended a hand. I looked at her.
Said nothing.
Just nodded slowly. It took her 10 full minutes into the interview to pause mid-sentence and squint at me. "Wait, do I know you?" Her voice was casual, too casual. Like she wasn't sure if she should pretend or apologize. I leaned forward and said softly, "Trisha Morgan." The silence that followed felt like a thunderclap. She blinked. Swallowed.
Oh, wow.
"Trish. Oh my God. It's so good to see you. You look amazing."
Wow.
This is so wild, right? I didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just let the air hang. Dana glanced between us, confused. Lauren kept talking, filling the silence with fake laughter and old stories she clearly didn't remember accurately. High school was crazy, right? I mean, everyone was a mess back then. I wanted to ask her what was so crazy about calling someone charity case. I wanted to ask if she remembered the coins. Or the ketchup lunch. But I didn't. I said, "Thank you for your time," and walked out. Later that week, I got an email from her. "Trish, hey again. I really hope the interview went well. I'd love to work with your team. I've changed a lot since school.
Hope you can see that.
Let's reconnect soon. Maybe dinner?" My treat. It wasn't even rejection that made my chest ache. It was the assumption, the arrogance, the idea that time erases harm without apology. She wasn't reaching out to make peace. She was reaching up, trying to grab onto what I'd built. Then came the party. Our company's 5th anniversary. Big venue. Big guest list.
Press. Investors.
Partners. And somehow Lauren showed up. Wearing red velvet and confidence. I don't know who invited her. But when she saw me walk onto the stage to speak, I watched her face freeze. I watched her whisper something to the woman next to her. Maybe that's her?
Or,
I didn't know she was the founder. And maybe for the first time in her life, she realized she didn't know me at all. The next morning, I got another message. I owe you an apology.
for everything.
If you're willing to meet, I'd like to explain.
I didn't reply.
Not because I was angry, but because nothing she said now would erase what she did then. But the real twist? She wasn't the only one from my past applying for jobs. 2 more names popped up in the next month. A former class president, a girl who once stole my lunch and blamed it on hunger hormones. All of them now needed work, and the universe had brought them straight to my door. But I wasn't interested in revenge. Not really. Not the petty kind, anyway. I sat in my office one evening, watching the sun set over the city skyline. And I thought about that girl in the trailer. The one who whispered to herself at night, "You're gonna make it, Trish." She didn't dream of making people bow. She dreamed of making it out. And she had. I didn't block Lauren. I didn't write back, either. I didn't need to. My silence said more than any paragraph ever could. For years, I'd been screaming silently, trying to prove I was worth listening to, worth noticing, worth loving.
Now?
I no longer needed their ears or their eyes. Just my own voice. The first thing I did was change my number. The second was deleting all my old contacts that didn't serve me anymore.
Gone.
Even the ones who meant well. The classmates who stayed silent when I was being mocked in the hallway. The people who watched me carry the burden of poverty and embarrassment like it was my fault. I unfollowed them. Unfriended them. Not out of hate, but healing. I also stopped trying to explain my success. For so long, I felt like I had to overcompensate, tell people it was luck or timing or the right network. Now, I just said, I worked for it. And that was enough. I started spending weekends alone, not lonely, just alone. Walking the city, visiting art museums, sitting in parks with coffee and a blank notebook. Once, at a coffee shop, I overheard 2 women whispering, "That's her. Trisha Morgan. She owns Glare Tech." I didn't turn, didn't wave. I just smiled quietly into my cup. Because 5 years ago, I was invisible.
And now?
They saw me, but I didn't need to be seen.
Even my posture changed.
I no longer bent slightly in crowded rooms, trying to make myself smaller. I stood tall, straight, and silent. Power didn't come from shouting or spotlight. It came from restraint, from choosing peace when chaos was easy. My assistant once asked if I wanted to respond to an Instagram comment someone from high school had left under a company post. Wow, I always knew she'd be something special. We went to school together. I said, "No need." She asked, "You sure? It might be good PR." I smiled. Silence is the best press. Around that time, I received a message from my mother. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She wasn't cruel, just absent. All through my childhood, she chose her boyfriends, her pain, and her pills over me. Her text said, "Hey Trish, I saw you in that Forbes article. Proud of you. Wish we could catch up. Love you always." I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Then I turned off my phone and went to the gym. There was a calm in not responding. A stillness I'd never known. No chaos to fix. No wounds to soothe. No performance to give. I started therapy again. But this time, not because I was broken. Because I was whole and wanted to protect that wholeness. My therapist asked me once, "What does peace look like to you?" And I said, "It looks like walking into a room and not hoping anyone sees me. It looks like walking out and knowing I don't owe them anything." She nodded, and I think for the first time, I really understood what boundaries meant. I stopped explaining why I didn't go to the high school reunion. I stopped feeling bad for not replying to DMs that said, "We should get lunch. Catch up." I didn't want to catch up. I wasn't behind. And they weren't ahead. We were just in different worlds now. At one point, someone from the old days, maybe Brian, the guy who used to call me Discount Diva, sent an email asking if he could pitch me a business idea. He ended with, "Would love to build something together." I know we weren't super close in school, but I always respected your hustle. I read it once, then archived it. Not out of spite, just because I had better things to build, and they didn't include people who once watched me starve. My withdrawal wasn't dramatic. I didn't make announcements. I didn't post quotes. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't valued and started investing where I was in myself, in my team, in my quiet mornings, in my growing empire. The biggest power shift?
I stopped thinking about them.
For years, I carried the weight of their names, their laughs, their words. Now they were just background noise. And I was the main character of my own story. Finally, I didn't expect the message. Not from her. Not from anyone, really. It was a Wednesday, mid-morning. I was sipping an oat milk latte at the office when my assistant popped in and said, "Hey, you've got a visitor in reception. She says it's important." Name? She didn't give one. Just said it's personal. I almost said no, but something in my gut said go. When I walked into the reception area, I saw her. Older woman, maybe late 60s. Graceful. Hair in a perfect twist.
Pearls.
A coat that looked vintage but expensive.
She stood up when she saw me.
Eyes kind. A little watery. "You're Trisha?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." She took a step forward. "I'm sorry to just show up like this. I didn't know how else to reach you." I folded my arms gently. "Do I know you?"
No.
"But I know what you did." I blinked. "I know what you did for my grandson. 3 years ago. You paid his tuition. His final semester. He never told us who it was. Just that an anonymous donor covered the balance and let him graduate." My chest tightened. I started to say. But she pulled something from her purse, a printed photo of a young man in a graduation cap, smiling wide. "I thought you should know he's in med school now. He volunteers every week. He's doing well. And he wouldn't be where he is without you." I stared at the photo, then at her. He was the intern, the quiet one, the one who came into our office for a 6-week unpaid position and never complained, even when I found him eating cup noodles in the break room. He didn't ask for help, but I saw the struggle in his eyes, the same one I once carried. So I asked finance to cover his tuition balance. No credit, no announcement, just a quiet deposit. And now here was his grandmother, standing in my lobby, tears in her eyes. I just wanted to say, "Thank you. You changed his life." We sat in the small waiting lounge for half an hour. She told me how he almost dropped out, how they had no money left after his father passed, how he never gave up, but almost gave in, until someone stepped in. "I told him," she said. "Someone must have seen his heart. That's why they helped." I smiled, the warmth blooming in my chest. I didn't expect this. She squeezed my hand. "People see you, Trisha. The right ones always do." That evening, I got a message request on Instagram from a name I didn't recognize. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but I just found out you're the one who helped me back then. I didn't know for sure. You were anonymous, but my grandma confirmed it today. I just want to say thank you. No one's ever believed in me like that. I won't forget it." I stared at that message longer than I expected, because for years I had begged to be seen. Now, it was happening without me even trying. A week later, the grandmother posted something on Facebook. A long, beautiful post about her grandson's journey. She didn't mention me by name, but the story spread. People shared it, and someone commented, "Was that Trisha Morgan's company? I heard she's helped more students like that." Suddenly, the narrative was no longer the girl who got bullied for being poor. It was the woman who quietly lifts others. I began receiving emails from people I didn't know. "You probably don't remember me, but you let me shadow your product team last year. That changed my entire career. Your team donated to our school's robotics program. My daughter just won a scholarship because of that. You spoke at my community college 3 years ago. I still have your words written in my journal." These people weren't part of the old story. They weren't classmates. They didn't know the trailer or the ketchup sandwich or the coin jars. But they knew me, the real me. Not through gossip or memory, but through impact. One night, At a tech fundraiser gala, a man walked up to me.
Tall. Polished.
Familiar. Trisha. I turned. It took me a second. Then I realized it was Mr. Connolly, my old high school economics teacher. You remember me? He asked, smiling. I nodded. Of course. You taught me how to write a business plan. He laughed. I still show your final project to my students. I told them you were the one to watch. My throat tightened. I wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I always was. Even when others didn't see it. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. Validation didn't come from revenge. It came from kindness coming full circle. From people, strangers even, recognizing a light I'd long protected in silence. And it reminded me, you don't have to shout your worth. The right people hear you, even in whispers. It started with a like. Lauren, the ringleader of my bullies, the girl who once shouted "Rag Girl" across the cafeteria, liked one of my company's posts on LinkedIn. Then another. Then a comment. Wow, Trisha, you've come so far. So proud of you, girl.
I stared at it, jaw slack.
So proud of me?
Now?
After years of sneers and sabotage? I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. Let it sit there, a little digital echo of hypocrisy. A few days later, I got an email. Subject line. Let's catch up. It was from Kayla, one of the backup dancers to Lauren's lead, the girl who laughed the loudest when I wore hand-me-down jeans. Hey Trisha, hope you're doing amazing. Just saw a profile on you in the Women in Tech newsletter. Wow, you're killing it. Would love to grab coffee sometime and reminisce. I'm launching a lifestyle brand soon and would love to hear your insights.
Ah.
There it was. Not sorry. Not an acknowledgement. Just a let's grab coffee with a side of self-interest. I didn't answer.
Didn't need to.
A week later, another message. This time on Facebook. From my aunt. Hey sweetheart, just wanted to say we're so proud of you. Your mom's been bragging about you to everyone. She says you might be hiring.
I stared at that word. Bragging.
The same woman who let me skip meals because her boyfriend didn't like extra mouths was now bragging. Suddenly I was valuable, not because I was loved, but because I could be leveraged. Then came the text from my mom herself. Hey baby, I know we've had ups and downs, but I miss you. I'd love to talk. Maybe we could get together next week? Just us girls. I didn't reply. She followed up a few hours later. Also, I told the neighbors you might be giving me a car. LOL. Don't make me a liar. My chest burned. Not with sadness, but with clarity. She didn't want me. She wanted the story, the perks, the daughters she could show off. Not the one who used to cry quietly behind a locked bathroom door. The final straw came when Lauren, yes, Lauren showed up at my office. No appointment. Just walked in. My assistant, bless her, texted first. There's a Lauren Carr here to see you? She says it's an old friend. I typed back. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. Already did, she replied. She left a note. Do you want it? I said yes.
She brought it in.
White card. Curvy handwriting. Trish, so proud of you. Would love to reconnect. I feel like we've both grown so much. Let's leave the past in the past, yeah? Call me anytime, Lauren.
Grown?
She'd grown? I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Because here I was bruised, rebuilt, stronger than ever. And she was still using glitter pens and fake sweetness to get her way. I kept the card. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. Of what I survived. Of who I used to chase. And why I never would again. The thing is, they didn't come back because they loved me. They came back because the world now loved me. Because my name was in articles. Because I was invited to conferences. Because their image benefited from proximity to mine. They weren't sorry. They were strategic. But I saw through it. Every fake message. Every sugar-coated request. Every "we always knew you'd be special." No, they didn't. They knew how to mock. They knew how to push. But they never knew how to nurture.
And now? Now they wanted in.
Backstage passes to a show they never paid to attend. But this time, I was the one choosing the guest list. And they weren't invited. It was late. One of those quiet nights where the city hummed like a lullaby and even the glow of my laptop screen felt softer. I was alone in my apartment, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the calm I'd spent years chasing. I hadn't planned on working late, but something kept me there. An email came in. Subject line: "You probably don't remember me, but I remember you." I opened it, expecting another pitch, another fake apology, another reach from the past trying to rewrite history.
But it wasn't that.
Not even close. "Dear Trisha, you don't know me." Not really. My name is Natalie Ramos. I was 2 years behind you in high school. We never spoke, but I knew who you were. Everyone did. I remember the way they treated you. The names. The whispers. The way they'd knock into your locker or roll their eyes when you raised your hand in class. And I remember how you never changed. You still showed up. You still spoke with kindness. You still helped anyone who asked, even when they didn't deserve it. I remember watching you once, sophomore year, I think, when you gave your lunch to a girl who forgot hers. You didn't make a big deal of it. Just slid it over and smiled like it was nothing. But it was something. It mattered. Because I saw you. And now, seeing who you've become, you didn't just survive. You transformed. And watching your journey has given people like me, quiet people, unseen people, hope. So, thank you. Not just for your success, but for proving that kindness wins. For making space for those of us still finding our voices. You may not remember me, but I'll never forget you. With deepest respect, Natalie. I sat in silence, completely still. Tears welled in my eyes, not from pain, but from release. From the kind of recognition that doesn't scream, it sees. For so long, I'd built walls around myself. Not to keep people out, but to keep old versions of myself safe. The one who sat alone at lunch. The one who walked home in the cold. The one who pretended broken shoes were just vintage. That girl never wanted fame. She wanted to matter. And now someone had written to say, you did. A few days later, a package arrived in my office. No return name. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, beautiful, with a sticky note on the front. This is the kind of journal I always imagined you writing in. I hope you still write. The world needs your words.
N.
I smiled. Because yes, I still wrote. Late at night. Early in the morning. In between meetings and memories and moments of stillness. And now I'd write in this. Because someone out there believed in me, not for my resume, but for my resilience. A few weeks after that, I gave a talk at a college, a Q&A session with students. One girl stood up at the mic, hands shaking. Hi, my name's Alicia. I just wanted to say, your story reminds me of mine. And it makes me believe that maybe I can make it too. Thank you. I looked her straight in the eye. You will make it. That's the thing about kindness. Real kindness. It doesn't disappear. It just takes the long way home. When I walked back to my car that night, I paused. Just sat there behind the wheel. No music. No phone. Just a deep breath. And then another. Because I realized I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was surrounded by proof that what I gave, quietly, consistently, without applause, had returned to me tenfold. In gratitude. In letters. In voices that echoed far louder than old bullies ever could. It was a Sunday afternoon. Warm sunlight spilled through my living room windows, catching dust particles midair and turning them into golden flecks. I was barefoot, wearing an old hoodie, tea in hand, and finally, at peace. Then came the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. No deliveries. No meetings. Just quiet. But the knock came again, louder this time. I moved toward the door, cautiously. Peered through the peephole. It was my mother. And standing just behind her, Lauren. For a moment I froze. Not out of fear, but disbelief. I opened the door only halfway. Trisha, Mom breathed, her voice too soft, too sweet. Lauren stood stiffly beside her, clutching a beige purse like it might explode. I said nothing. Just looked. Mom cleared her throat. Honey, we didn't want to text or call. We thought Maybe face to face would be better. There's so much I wish I could take back. I raised an eyebrow. Such as? She blinked. All of it. I waited. Silence. Lauren stepped forward. Listen, I know I wasn't exactly kind back then. But people grow.
People change.
And I figured, well, now that we're adults, maybe we could reconnect. I heard you're hiring, and I thought. Stop, I said softly. Both women froze. I know why you're here. My voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't cold. It was certain. You're not here because you miss me. You're here because I made something of myself, and now I'm convenient. That's not true, Mom whispered, eyes glassy. I love you. You love the version of me that earns headlines. The version that makes your friends jealous. But not the version that used to cry herself to sleep 2 rooms down while you turned up the volume on the TV. She flinched. Lauren stepped in again. Trisha, please. It was high school. I was poor, not invisible. She looked away. I'm not angry anymore, I continued. I'm not bitter. And I'm not here to prove a point. I don't need you to apologize.
I don't need you to admit anything.
I've made peace with the past. My hand tightened around the edge of the door. But I also don't need you in my present. A long silence. Mom opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. But we're your family. No, I said gently. You were my first lesson in survival. The air grew heavy. I stepped back a little, preparing to close the door. Take care of yourselves, I said. But please don't come back. And then, as simply as breathing, I closed the door. No yelling. No crying.
No second-guessing.
Just closure. I leaned my back against the wood and exhaled slowly. Not shaky. Not overwhelmed. Peaceful. That was the difference now. In the past, I would have begged them to see me. Today, I chose not to be seen at all by them. Because not everyone who watched you suffer deserves to witness your glow-up. Some people only see your light when it can warm them. And that's not love. That's hunger. Later that night, I got a text. From a number I didn't recognize, but I knew exactly who it was. You didn't have to be so cold. I deleted it without replying. Then I blocked the number. And in that moment I realized, saying no didn't make me cruel. It made me clear. Because there is a kind of power in silence. In walking away. In not needing to prove, or defend, or justify. In just being done. Sometimes, when I wake up in the morning and the light hits just right, I think about her. The girl I used to be. The one with calloused hands from part-time shifts after school. The one who glued her shoes back together because new ones weren't in the budget. The one who smiled through cafeteria insults like she didn't hear them echo for hours afterward. That girl lived in silence. Not because she didn't have words, but because no one listened. So she whispered to herself. One day, they'll see. But here's what she didn't know. By the time they finally would, she wouldn't need them to. Healing doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes soft like a deep exhale. A locked door. An unread message. A dinner table with new people who don't flinch when you speak. I spent years thinking I had to earn love. To buy my seat at the table with sacrifice. To be grateful for crumbs because someone else had it worse. But love that has to be earned through suffering isn't love. If you're watching this and it feels too familiar, the being overlooked, the forced smiles, the you're too much or not enough, let me say this clearly. You're not too much. You're just too real for people who pretend. You're not hard to love. You've just been surrounded by people who only recognize your worth when they need something from you. You're not invisible. They just refuse to see you because seeing you meant acknowledging their own failure to love you right. And here's the most powerful truth I've learned. Closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes from your decision to stop waiting for one. You don't need to prove anything. Not your kindness. Not your ambition. Not your success. Not your pain. You are allowed to walk away. Quietly.
Proudly.
Without a single backward glance. I thought for the longest time that success would taste like revenge. Like rubbing it in their faces.
But now?
It tastes like stillness. Like peace. like waking up and not dreading the mirror, like answering your own phone and no longer flinching at the name on the screen. It tastes like freedom. So if you're still in that part of your life, still working late shifts, still being mocked, still hearing that voice in your head that says, maybe it's me, let me be your reminder. It's not you. It was never you. You are just too bright for the shadows they lived in. And sometimes, it's the ones who walk alone who create their own path and end up building roads for others to follow. If no one has said it to you before, let me say it now. I'm proud of you. For surviving. For trying. For staying soft in a world that demanded hardness. For continuing to care even when no one cared back. You are enough. Exactly as you are. And maybe one day, someone will walk up to you, a stranger, a student, a younger version of you in someone else's eyes, and say, because of you, I kept going. And in that moment, you'll realize, you were never invisible.
You were just ahead of your time.
Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your growth. Some people only get to hear about it from a distance, and that's okay. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not show up, not to the apology, not to the party, not to the war they keep trying to drag you into. Just live. Live well. Live fully. Live like the whole world is watching, and then realize it doesn't even matter if they are. You're not here to prove. You're here to be. And being is more than enough. So, to the girl who was bullied for being poor, look at you now. They work for you. But more importantly, you no longer work for their approval.